3 days. 3 days until the World Cup begins. Cal, how is your World Cup fever?
Interesting. I think it's a Winter World Cup, so it's different. But I suppose the closer you get to it, you get excited, don't you? So no, I'm looking forward to it.
It doesn't feel like a World Cup though, does it? That's a strange thing. I mean, driving in today, pouring down with rain, freezing cold, and yet we're just days away from, the biggest football tournament in the world.
Yeah, it feels like you should be in a beer garden in June or July, doesn't it? Yeah, it's a strange one, but no, nevertheless, I think getting as it gets closer to it, it is exciting, and the fever's creeping ever so closer now as we're close to the opening game.
And what is strange, I'm sure you've seen that Qatar have been accused of paying fake supporters to parade around. That's bizarre.
Yeah, it's baffling, isn't it? I think if that's what they want to do, let them do it. But I think it's wrong, and I think it's sort of tarnishing the legacy of what the World Cup will be once it's happened.
You're a big Birmingham City fan. How much money would it cost to get you to become a fake Aston Villa fan?
Well, Matt, I think money is no object. I don't think I could be doing that. No, not at all. It's similar with you and Burnley. I don't think you could support Blackburn, could you? But you look at these fans, buying beer from every country in the World Cup. That must take some doing.
Yeah, fair play. I really hope that there's a little mini World Cup tournament going on there. The best beer. That's certainly one to keep an eye on. Looking forward to that one. Welcome to World Cup Que Sera Qatar, a podcast produced and presented by sports journalism students live from our radio studios in Preston. I'm Matt Smith.
And I'm Callum Insall. With the World Cup kicking off in just 3 days' time, we'll be looking at which teams and players could cause the biggest upset at Qatar 2022.
We also have The Athletic's Burnley FC writer Andy Jones in the studio to discuss 2 of the Clarets World Cup call-ups. Before we get to that, we're delighted to be joined by...
I'm Nathan Salmon, third-year student at UCLan, Blackpool fan, Blackpool born and raised. Unfortunately, we don't have any players in the World Cup. Kenny Dougal missed out for Australia.
I'm Matt Salmons, a second-year sports journalism student. My team is Northampton Town, which means it's going to be a very strange World Cup for me because my club are going to continue playing as well as England at the World Cup.
I'm Matt Ward, everyone just calls me Wardy. I'm from Bradford, big Bradford fan, and similar to Matt, obviously my team in League Two, still going to be playing for the World Cup, so no different.
I'm Ollie Woolton, a third-year sports journalism student here at UCLan. I'm a Stoke City fan, and unlike Nathan, one of my team's players has got into the World Cup. It's Harry Souttar with Australia.
And kicking off the show, we are joined by Andy Jones, Burnley FC writer from The Athletic. How are you, Andy?
Very good, thanks. Good to be back at UCLan. It's been a while. Strange to be back, but yeah, now excited to be on your podcast.
And talk to us about the 2 call-ups from Burnley's squad for the tournament, one of which proved to be a very, very late call.
Yeah, so Connor Roberts has been called up for Wales, and that was sort of been expected all season. He's been a big part of Wales' squad for a number of years now, and when we spoke to him earlier in the season, he was just speaking about how excited he was to be part of a World Cup, and basically he was just ticking off the games to make sure he wasn't injured. And yeah, the later call-up is Anas Sarori, who's changed allegiances. He was recently, I think he's played for Belgium under 21s earlier in the season, and is now joined Morocco and become part of their World Cup squad. So exciting times for him. He's been really impressive since he's come in, and it'll be interesting to see how he gets on.
On Zaroury, you touched on it there, Andy. Born in Belgium, represented them at youth level, and all of a sudden now is going to the World Cup with Morocco. Do you think it's jumping the gun a little bit? He's obviously a young player, bags of talent, but do you think maybe he could have waited a little bit longer for perhaps a Belgium call-up further down the line?
It's an interesting one because I see that logic, and given what we've seen of Zaroury, for those who have seen him, those who haven't, he's got so much talent. He's basically got 2 wands of feet. He can just do anything. He torments defenders, and has done since he settled into life at Burnley, because he was a bit of a late arrival in the transfer window, and they gave him a bit of time to ease in. But since then, he's been electric, and you watch if you see the highlights of the game from the recent derby win for Burnley, he's at the heart of everything. Gets the first assist with a superb cross, and then scores. So it's an interesting. The problem is that Belgium have just packed with so much talent, and would you end up just being left out in the shuffle or get lost in the shuffle? Whereas Morocco, you're probably offering yourself a bigger chance of being guaranteed a place in a national squad. But yeah, this is the thing. He's got so much potential, and it's whether he can fulfil that. And at the same time, World Cups every 4 years, they're a special moment for any player. And I think if you're given the chance to play in one, there's a lot to think about, and it doesn't necessarily surprise me that he's decided to switch allegiances and take that opportunity.
And looking at the group stages, it's a sense of irony perhaps that Morocco do play Belgium. That'll be an interesting one, and I'm sure it'll give Zaroury extra fuel going into that game.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how he's used, or if he's used in the tournament, because he's such a late addition, and he's never played for the nation. So, how will the manager use him? Will he be able to put him straight in? We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I can imagine if he gets on the pitch in that game, he's gonna certainly want to make a mark and try and impress and sort of show, I guess, what Belgium are gonna miss.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about potential underdogs and dark horses later in the show. Is there any unexpected team you feel could impress?
This is always a really difficult question, because I always don't know where to set the benchmark for a dark horse. So, like, if Portugal won it, for example, would that be a surprise? Would that be a dark horse team? I don't know, but sort of Senegal with the team I was looking at, really impressive, won the AFCON. But the injury to Sadio Mane has sort of dampened the expectations for them, because he's so important. So the other team is sort of Uruguay. I just think they've got loads and packed with talent. They've got the experienced heads of Luis Suarez and Edison Cavani, but also sort of the younger players coming through in terms of Darwin Núñez, who I've seen a lot as a Liverpool fan, and he's just a maniac basically, and creates chaos wherever he goes. And also Fede Valverde, who's been sensational for Real Madrid. So Uruguay and sort of Senegal, if Mane is fit, but I think that's a big question mark.
Andy, thank you for now. Delighted that you'll be joining us in the studio for the rest of the show. So look forward to speaking to you a bit later on. Cameroon, 1990, Turkey, 2002, Ghana, 2010, Costa Rica in 2014 and Croatia in 2018. Before anyone suggests it, I am old, but these aren't the holiday destinations that I've been to in recent years. They represent the theme of today's podcast, World Cup Dark Horses. Cal, when you think about previous dark horses in tournaments gone by, who's the biggest standout for you?
For me, Croatia 2018, I think, nobody expected them to get to the final, beating England in the semi-final. Most people would have expected England to get that one step further to bringing it home, and I think that Croatia side sort of stumped England, unfortunately for us guys. But no, I think Croatia in 2018 was probably my favourite and most memorable dark horse.
You're bringing back some horrible memories there, Carl. Thanks very much for that. For me, Ghana in 2010. The energy they brought to the tournament, being so close to the semi-final, of course, the Luis Suarez handball controversy before losing on penalties. Such a cruel way for them to go out. But if we can see a dark horse performance like Ghana did in 2010 in the upcoming tournament, then that'll be really exciting. So, of course, like we say, 2022 tournament begins in just 3 days. Wardy, I'm going to come to you first. Who should we be looking at, in your opinion, as potential dark horses?
Well, I've picked USA out of Group B with England, Iran and Wales. And obviously some people look at it and think, USA, who have they got? Do you think, how are they going to do something at this World Cup? But I think they could. You look at that group, obviously England are the massive favourites to win that, but I think USA could come second in the evening if England continue the way they have been in the Nations League. They could even possibly win the group. USA, I think they've got enough talent and enough strong players in that squad to do something at the World Cup. You've got to look at Dest, the fullback from AC Milan, who's played most of the Champions League games for AC Milan. They've relied on him at one of Europe's biggest stages to do the job. You've got to look at Tim Ream and Anthony Robinson, who have been key for Fulham and why Fulham have been so successful in the Premier League this season. And then, of course, you've got to look at Tim Weah, who's obviously son of George Weah, obviously the football legend. I think if they can provide for him, he can get some goals.
Just looking at the squad, though, I think the average age in the qualifying campaign was 23 years, 302 days, which is the youngest USA team in history for a qualifying stage. Do you think that'll count against them?
I think maybe if they get into the later stage, maybe the quarterfinals, semis, and it goes to penalties, extra time, then yeah, possibly. Maybe fatigue and inexperience could come into it. But I think if they come up against some of the poorer teams, let's say, in the World Cup, I think they have enough quality to finish them off.
Ollie, what about you?
So the team I've gone for is Poland. I think one of Europe's sort of underdog nations. When I look at Group C, I just think behind Argentina, obviously everyone knows about Argentina. They've got Lionel Messi. When you look at Mexico, they've got a bit of unrest in the camp with Raul Jimenez, and Poland are definitely better than Saudi Arabia on paper. Remains to be seen, obviously, when the tournament comes around. They scored 30 in 10 games in qualifying in England's group. The team's come through a lot. They advanced to the playoffs in the unseeded side of the draw, making it tougher for them. They got a bye against Russia, obviously due to the war, and the coach actually left in December last year due to a fallout with the FA. They eventually beat Sweden 2-0 to qualify, which I think shows the squad's togetherness and shows that they've really got what it takes to beat some of the top nations at this tournament. As we all know, obviously Robert Lewandowski, he's one of the best strikers probably of all time. They've got him. He scored 5 in 11 games at Euro tournaments. He's never actually scored at a World Cup. He played at 2018. He didn't score, but he scored 18 and 19 for Barcelona this season. I mean, he's showing those signs of slowing down. So even though he's got one in his last 5 for Poland, I think he can strike at any time. And as long as they get him the right service, then he'll definitely go on to be a threat this tournament. When I look at the players, I think this sort of third golden generation, they're calling it in Poland, it's likely sort of nearing the end of any chance really to achieve anything on the international stage. They've got Lewandowski, as I said, he's 34. Kamil Glik's 34 as well. And then you've got Krychowiak and Szczesny, who are both 32. And so I think even though they've got a lot of young players coming through, it could be their sort of last chance to achieve much on the international stage. They got to the Euro 2016 quarterfinals, but I think this is really their last time with Lewandowski in his prime. If they do come second in the group, then obviously it's most likely going to be France in the round of 16, which I think will be tough for them. But you never know with a tournament like this. France obviously failed to sort of achieve anything at the last Euro, so you never know. When I look at Poland, a lot of their key players, they've got like Matty Cash. Obviously everyone knows about him. He plays for Aston Villa. He's a fast, exciting right back. He was obviously English born, but I think he can really make a difference this time around. Piotr Zielinski, he plays for Napoli, one of the best teams in Europe at the minute. Creative spark, he's got an eye for goal, and then of course I mentioned Szczesny before. He's one of Europe's top keepers. Everyone knows about him. He's a massive frame in that goal, and he'll be really key. I think having a good goalkeeper, in my opinion, is massive to going far in tournament football.
And Ollie, if the form of Robert Lewandowski isn't, up to what we've seen in the past, do you think that damages Poland's chances of success?
I think there's definitely a case to be made for that. Obviously, when you look at any of the top teams, you look at Portugal without Ronaldo in years gone by, you look at England without Kane, you're always going to miss one of your top players. It's tough for them to replace a guy like Lewandowski. Obviously, as I said, he's one of the best strikers of all time. So I think they've got a good replacement waiting in the wings. They've got Krzysztof Piątek, who actually scored against Chile yesterday in a warm-up game. So, and he plays a similar style to Lewandowski. So I don't think it'd be the be-all and end-all. But as you say, I think it'd be really tough if Lewandowski did get injured or was just really out of form.
Now, for me, the underdogs this year, 100% Serbia. Matt, if you want to add it to your holiday destination list, you can do. They're littered with attacking options. The likes of Dusan Vlahovic, Alexander Mitrovic up front, who we all know is pivotal to Fulham's success over the past few seasons. He has been nursing a groin injury, though. But as of late, the manager, Dragan Stojkovic, has come out and said he would take the forward to the World Cup without a leg if he needed to. So that's how highly rated he is. Not to mention Filip Kostic, Vlahovic's Juventus teammate, Europa League winner with Eintracht Frankfurt last season. He's earned the right with the move to Juventus, and he's brilliant. He crosses the ball, and the two big men in the box are going to be loving it. And he does provide defensive support as well, because they do play a back three. And because they play the back three, this allows Dusan Tadic to sit behind the strikers in the 3-5-2 system, and he's chipping in with goals, passing the ball, making assists. He's brilliant. With Tadic, that allows Sergej Milinkovic-Savic freedom in the midfield to roam wherever he wants, because there's a defensive midfielder behind him. And he used to play as a second striker, and it didn't really work for Serbia. His older brother Vanja, is also in the squad. He is one of the 3 Serbian goalkeepers to play. But they were both actually born in Spain, which would have been weird to see, because Milinkovic-Savic could probably get into that Spain squad. And both their parents, athletes. His father was a footballer for Almeria, Spanish side, and his mother a basketball player. So it was inevitable they were going to grow up to be athletes, really. Serbia topped the Nations League group and their World Cup qualifying group. They beat Portugal in the final match to top that group, which almost saw Cristiano Ronaldo miss out on what would potentially be his last World Cup. The only downside to the Serbia side would be the defenders. And if Nemanja Vidic was in his prime, this side could go on to win the competition. I genuinely think that. But their defenders now aren't necessarily cutting the mustard compared to the rest of them. In fact, as well, I simulated the tournament on the new World Cup mode on FIFA, and Serbia were the winners. So I don't know whether that's EA being strange like they always are, or it could happen. You don't know.
You mentioned like Mitrovic and Vlahovic there. Do you think there might be a little bit of unrest with Vlahovic possibly wanting to start, but obviously Mitrovic, he's in such good form that you can't not start him. Obviously Serbia's like star man.
Yeah. Well, what they've been doing in qualifiers, they've been playing the both of them up top. They've also got Luka Jovic off the bench, so it's a different aspect. He's not a big man. He's a small guy. He gets in behind players. But they seem to be working. And when you've got Filip Kostic whipping in balls with that
Of course.
he's going to find the head perfectly. So, yeah, I do think they'll go far, Serbia. It is a tough group. They've got Brazil. They're the favourites to win it. Switzerland aren't a turnover either, but I think they should beat Switzerland and Cameroon. And if they get through, they could cause upsets along the way as well.
Absolutely outstanding that you based your prediction predominantly on a game. That's terrific. I really, really appreciate that. And finally for you, Matt, you've gone for Denmark.
Yeah, the three very good cases put forward there, but I'm going to put forward Denmark. We'll remember them from Euro 2020. I think they were everybody's second team after the Christian Eriksen incident. They obviously lost 2-1 in extra time to England in the semi-finals of the Euros. And it's going to be pretty emotional, I think, for all of us to see Eriksen back at on the world stage, a major tournament after his cardiac arrest at the Euros. In qualifying, Denmark were pretty perfect. They were just short. They played 10, won 9 and only lost 1. They only conceded 3 in qualifying as well and scored 30. In their World Cup history, their best performance was the quarterfinals in '98, and I genuinely think they can probably better that this time round. In 2018, they lost in the round of 16 on penalties to Croatia. Again, I think they can do better than that this time. Important to note that they've got France, Tunisia and Australia in their group. Obviously, France is going to be a tough test for them, but I think they should get out of that group fairly comfortably. And important to note as well, they could top the group. They did beat France 2-0 in their last game, which was back in September in the Nations League. They've got a very good spine of the team as well. You can start with the goalkeeper, Kasper Schmeichel, who we all know from his time at Leicester, now playing in Ligue 1 for Nice. Simon Kjaer, their captain, he's the third most capped Dane in history. In midfield, they've got Martin Jensen, Pierre-Emil Højbjerg, Thomas Delaney, and obviously Christian Eriksen and Norgard. They're the 5 midfielders that I think any manager at this tournament would take in their team. There's a good balance there of defensive midfielders like Højbjerg and Delaney. And going forward, you've obviously got Eriksen as well, who we know can score from anywhere, can pick out a pass as well when he's on top form. And then up front, 3 very good strikers. Kasper Dolberg, I think Cal said off camera, he's got potential to be the player of the tournament. He's got 11 in 37 for Denmark in his international career. Mikkel Damsgaard as well, he scored that free kick against England back in Euro 2020 that I mentioned earlier. He was also the youngest Dane to score for Denmark at the Euros when he scored against Russia. And Martin Braithwaite up top as well, one of the more experienced players, 10 in 62 for Denmark. So yeah, Denmark in my case, and I think they could go very, very deep into this tournament as well.
Some tremendous arguments there, and certainly some teams to keep an eye on. So now we've touched on the teams, Cal. What we're moving on to next?
Players, key players, and Matt, we'll go back to you. You're looking at a potential home Qatari hero, aren't you?
Yeah, I've gone for Akram Asif from Qatar on Sunday. I think we're all going to have to look out for him against Ecuador. Qatar are going to be up for it. They're hosting the World Cup, obviously. Their fans are going to be up for it, and I think Asif's going to be up for it. And he's going to be key to their success if they get any success at this tournament. He's got 15 assists in his last 12 games for Qatar in the Asian and Gold Cups. Plays out wide for Qatari side, Al Said. And I think if he performs well in this tournament and catches the eye, the Premier League are taking a break, all the major leagues in Europe and around the world are taking breaks. They're going to have people watching this World Cup, and if Asif impresses, I don't see why he couldn't get a move to Europe somewhere.
And Wardy, sticking with Nathan Salmon's Serbia theme, you've gone for Mitrovic.
Yeah, I've picked Mitrovic. I think, a lot at the start of the season, obviously when Fulham went up, a lot of people were saying that Mitrovic can't do it in the Prem, and over past seasons that's been proven that he can't handle it, and he's just a championship striker. But this season he's been immense. He's been Fulham's talisman. Fulham have just relied on him so much to get the goals, and I think he's going to have a good World Cup. I think if he checks off that groin injury and gets playing up front with Vlahovic, with them crosses going into the box and their delivery from Kostic, I think he could back some goals. I think he'll be a similar vein to Schick at the Euros.
And Ollie, there's a former English player who switched allegiances, am I right, as your key player?
Yeah, so my call is someone that's drawn quite a bit of controversy in England in recent years. There's Jamal Musiala. He's born in Germany, moved to England when he was 7. He played for Chelsea's academy until he was 16, then joined Bayern. In doing so, it means he played for England at under 15, 16, 17 and even under 21 level. He actually made his Germany debut in March 2021, just a couple of months before the Euros, after playing just 2 games for them at under 16 level. So he's really come to his own this season in the Bundesliga and Champions League. He's got 12 goals, 10 assists in 22 games. He's playing largely as attacking midfielder and sort of off the left-hand side as well. I think he's due to have a really big tournament. After Euro 2020, I think it maybe came a bit too soon in his development. And no Timo Werner obviously means that someone's going to have to score the goals for Germany. Obviously, they've got players like Leroy Sané, Serge Gnabry as well, but he might even play further forward as a false 9. But I think either way, he's going to be crucial to them going forward.
And Nathan, which player stood out on the latest copy of FIFA for your potential player of the tournament?
Well, I'll have you know he's actually pretty decent on FIFA as well. He's got the pace. Mohamed Kudus for Ghana. He's an attacking midfielder, plays for Ajax. He will be pivotal for Ghana this season, this World Cup. If they want to get out of a tough group as well, they've got Portugal, Uruguay, South Korea. It's going to be hard, but it's a fresh-faced Ghana squad. The likes of Iñaki Williams and Tariq Lamptey from Brighton joining the squad over the summer. However, Kudus was born in Accra, Ghana's capital, and he's caught the eyes of Ajax in the Danish league. And when Ajax approach you as well, I think you've got a bit of potential. Yeah. He's one of the many African players that have progressed through the Superliga side, Norgeland, and Liverpool and Everton fans will know him as well. Liverpool because he scored against them at Anfield in the Champions League this season. He scored against Rangers as well. And Everton were actually very close to signing him this summer on loan with the view of a permanent deal in the future. Despite this move falling through, the midfielder has scored 9 goals this season, and he's very explosive style of play. So he'll just burst past defenders. So it could catch him out. And Everton may be biting the hands off if he does have a good tournament, because the price tag will rise and there might be more lucrative clubs after him.
He's going to be baying for blood as well, isn't he, after Ghana and Uruguay's little thing in 2010. Exactly. So it's a massive game, that.
That'll be exciting.
And Andy, are there any potential key players you've been looking at?
Well, Jamal Musiala was sort of I think is the standout in terms of the potential that he's got, and this does feel like there's always that one young player, isn't it, who sort of steps up and sort of announces themselves, and he's sort of done that, or has been threatening to do that, and this is sort of the stage. In the Germany squad, there's also Yusufa Moukoko, the Borussia Dortmund striker, and I think whether he gets game time or not, his potential is just scary, and he's already sort of hitting the headlines in Germany with his production for Dortmund. So he's someone who potentially could be a bit of a surprise package, in that not many people I think would expect him to be or talk about him as one of the main guys. But given the chance, he could be someone who sort of really stands out.
I think Musiala as well. He's got that aspect of James Rodriguez where he could produce an absolute banger like Rodriguez did in the World Cup 2014.
Certainly a couple of really good shouts there, you've got to be said there. Potential upsets. It's all about upsets at the World Cup, isn't it? You always want to see the lesser expected teams show up and do some damage. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you'll be well aware that Cristiano Ronaldo has been in the headlines once more, but for slightly different reasons than bagging a couple of worldies. Salmon, what we're saying, what's going on?
Look, personally for me, I don't agree with it. I know he's come out and he's one of the best to ever play the game, but nobody's bigger than a football club. And the things he said, he has gone out on statement and said, I don't have respect for Erik ten Hag because he doesn't show respect for me. But when you're still at a club, especially, I sort of understand it if you're not at a club anymore, but when you're still at a club and you come out and you say things like that, you have to be mindful that it's not right. And maybe he is covering some things with the Glazers and the stagnation of the club since he was there over 10 years ago. But I just believe that you can't come out and say things like that and expect to be backed, personally.
Do you have, or anybody really, just opening this up to the guests, have you got any degree of sympathy for Ronaldo? There's a lot of fans that are always coming out and saying they want footballers to be more transparent, they want them to come out and be truthful and honest. That's exactly what Ronaldo's done here. Yeah,
to sort of play devil's advocate a little bit, do you not think, like, this is again to anyone, do you not think he's sort of bringing some home truths like to the dressing room, and in a team like Man United, like, these things sort of need to be said? He said about, I think it was about the chefs haven't changed since 2009. Is that not something that needs to be said in order for that to progress?
It might be brilliant cooks, so.
Yeah, you never know.
It could be.
But I just think like it just goes back to that saying that no one's bigger than the club, whether you're Ronaldo, whether you're the best player in the world, no one's bigger than the club, and you've got to have that level of respect for everybody at the club. You know, the way that he's come out and outed Ten Hag, outed Ragnick, outed pretty much the whole of Man United is just disrespectful to a club like Man United as well.
I don't think anyone's surprised by what he said though, because Gary Neville's been saying it on Sky for the last 2 years or whatever it's been. I think for me, I can understand why he's done it and where he's coming from, and what he said. Like I said, I don't think is a surprise to anyone. I think Nathan touched on it. I think the timing of it's just really strange. While he's still at the club, while he's still being paid by the club. I think
whilst it also like affects Portugal as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
it's affecting two camps.
If any of us were working in a job and went in on our employers, we'd be out the door immediately. Yeah. But because it's Ronaldo, he's kind of been. It seems so far that United are just kind of letting him off a little bit, which seems strange. So for me, if the interview had come out, in 5 years' time, once he's retired or whatever, then I'd kind of understand it a bit more. But for me, I think the biggest problem is the timing. Andy, I don't know what you think.
I think, I was just, the question I have is why, and I sort of understand the timing of it in terms of the World Cup. So he's away from most of Manchester United. Obviously, we've seen the sort of the video of him and Bruno not looking particularly comfortable in each other's company. But I think it's one of those, if he had conducted himself, perfectly, and he wasn't doing all these certain things like storming off before the end of the games and leaving stadiums, I think his comments would probably carry a lot of weight, and people would probably respect him for coming out while still at the club and talking about these issues of why the club's not moved on. The problem is he's sort of the way he's acted, and then the additional stuff about Ten Hag and the respect and all that type of stuff just doesn't help his cause, because there's certain points in there which are very true about Manchester United, and the fact that they've flatlined as a club, they've not grown, they've not developed, and now under Ten Hag they're trying to make those steps that they should have made a number of years ago. And I think that's the strange part, is that while Ronaldo is saying they need to make these steps, equally he's then sort of disrespecting the person who's trying to take the club to the next level and trying to bring them back up to where they used to be. So yeah, there's loads of it's really weird, but there is that element of sort of what he has said in terms of the Glazers, and you respect. I think Manchester United fans would respect that. It's just the fact that it comes as part of an interview that just is throwing fuel on the fire. Just really doesn't help things.
And just in closing, just quick 1 or 2 word answers. You look at the fans have been making noises about the Glazers for years now, and then Ronaldo comes out and says what the fans have been thinking. Just in a couple of words, starting with you, Nathan, is he right to criticise the owners the way he did?
Yes, he is. But if Scott McTominay does what he does, he never sees the shirt again.
Fair one. Matt?
Yeah, I would say yes. we all know what's been going on there, and he's got a massive voice. And if it sparks change at Manchester United, which I'm sure is something that Andy doesn't want to see as a Liverpool fan either, and I've got family that are Liverpool fans and stuff. So yeah, it's not. I think he's right to criticise them, and if it sparks change, it could be a good thing for United.
Andy?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's one of those situations where it might be a really important point in Manchester United's history, but one for the wrong reasons, but also for the right reasons.
And Ollie?
Yeah, I think when you say something like that, you've got to back it up on the pitch. So I think, yes, he was right to say what he said, but there's definitely a time and place, and this wasn't the time and place to do it.
So that's it for today. Thanks to our guests. We'll be sure to speak to them after the final to see how their dark horses did.
And just before we go, Andy, you'll be working for The Athletic throughout the tournament, doing a bit of World Cup work. Where can listeners find you on social media?
Yeah, so it's AD Jones _Jero is the Twitter handle, which I always mess up and forget, as you can tell. But yeah, that's where you'll find all my stuff, and obviously The Athletic is where you'll find all the World Cup content, which we're covering very extensively throughout the tournament.
Great stuff. Well, thanks, Andy, and thanks again to everybody for joining us today. This podcast was produced and presented by sports journalism students at the University of Central Lancashire in Preston. If you liked it, you can follow us on Spotify and share it with your friends. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Monday the 21st of November as we react to the opening game between Qatar and Ecuador, whilst previewing England's group opener against Iran.